Anais, I don't know how. I've never really decided how to pronounce her name. Um, was kind of one of the weirdest chapters in that whole debacle. Um, she used to have a staff member named Sonara. Uh, when I don't remember if I was RM or GM or just event master at the time. But she would she was the one of the laziest staff members I've ever known, and she wanted to do events. So I trained her, um, tried to get her to do invasions and stuff like that, and she just was not. She wasn't a good fit, so I think we ended up just letting her go. And then, of course, she became out of the blue. She replaced whoever she replaced. I don't even remember. I think it was Sahir that she replaced. And she reaches out to me out of the blue because at that point I wasn't staff anymore, and she's like, "Hey, would you like to? Um, I think I would really like to have you back on staff, um, and you could do events. I know you've always wanted to do events, and that's really all you ever wanted to focus on. So this would be a good fit." And I'm like, "Okay, I'm not really sure who you are, but okay, I guess I'll give you a shot." And then after she got me in and settled, she's like, "Oh, by the way, I was Sonara, and you are now my slave." Um, and yeah, I went from having basically unlimited staff access to just restricted to a designer. So I had to ask her for permission to any resource that I needed, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, she just made my life as difficult as possible. Um, so that was fun.
Mm-hmm. And sorry, go ahead if you have more.
No, there's plenty, but that was one of the weirdest.
Right. No worries. So I can't help but think, kind of in the back of my mind as I'm listening, to your feedback, and then as well as the other staff members. Did you ever feel like you were kind of, I guess, what I'm trying to think of is, obviously, so it was volunteer work, mm-hmm. and so you weren't directly associated with Mythic, although Eternal was, but
Jerk.
And I guess my question is, this is an unrehearsed question, but just from listening to that response, I can't help but think that I guess for us at the time, 10, 12 years ago and beyond, at the time it was a really big deal for us to play the game, but I think it probably even bigger deal to be a staff member. It felt really, I don't know, not powerful, but just like you were a part of something more. Like you were given the responsibility to look over the game. Did that feel like that for you, or was it purely, am I just bonkers and everybody that was a staff member did it just kind of for fun?
No, absolutely. There was definitely a sense of pride in. Well, I definitely felt a sense of pride in being a staff member, especially once I ended up heading into positions of RM and GM. Even though Mythic didn't really give us a ton of backing at all, it was mostly, in fact, the folks from the gaming center specifically that we talked to the most. So like Chris and Moores and Taz. Although Moores and Taz were qualified more as acts of nature than anything else. Chris was kind of the go-to for any like administrative things that we needed to do. But still, we never really represented Mythic, although I personally always try to kind of be professional about it. Perhaps too much so at first. Like I can admit that now, right? There's some sense of hubris that came with it. But I got over that I'd like to think I got over that pretty quickly. Like at some point, I would just tell everybody that came on, like, "Hey, we're just doing this because we're dumb, like because we're dumb, and we don't know any better, and we're trying to do something with this because nobody else is going to. Mythic's not going to they're not going to hire anybody to do this, so this community is all we've got."
So I know you mentioned that you only played a little bit on your own character in DFC, but I guess this is more appropriate for Darkness Falls. So what was your favorite character?
I like to do it from behind, man. I was an imp. I was a Nightblade. Um, I forgot the name of the other guild already because it's not important. Um, so I was glad that my guild survived into DFC and not the other one. Or no, I'm wrong. The Nightblades didn't survive. Damn it! Anyway, yeah, I really liked being a rogue and an imp. It was just my favorite because you could so it was you're always kind of like the ambulance, right? Like it was awesome because you could go places where most people didn't go, and you could like go save people that were dumb and like went into Eastern Desert or whatever, and they're like, oh yeah, I'll go rescue you, and just backstab everything to death and then drag them out. And there was this huge mystique around the high level imps. Like you don't mess with them because the next thing you know you're sitting in the hall and you were shit talking some high level imp. They're just gonna backstab you and drag you out and steal all your shit and just keep doing that. um, yeah, all that drama, man. I love that was my favorite part.
All right. Did you have a favorite item or a favorite weapon that you liked?
So the fire whip was like the way to go in DF. The fire whip, and some people like used the thunderhammer, but I thought they were dumb because it was the fire whip and the fiery fangs, like just a weird thing. So the first like your when you got to 20, you were like pretty good in original Darkness Falls because backstab was just so broken. Um, so as of level 20 with a fire whip, like you could do a lot of damage to most people. So pretty much, yeah, fire whip and fiery fangs. Like you could sell fiery fangs and the shields. I forget their name. The BCSs over and over. People love that stuff.
Mm-hmm. And this is a question I think I've asked most people, and that's, in theory, would you think it would be fun to have that kind of intra-realm PvP aspect in a game like DFC?
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest things that people always ask for, and kind of what led to arenas in DFC, was just that ability to wail on your own dumbass team members. And I use dumbass in like the most loving way possible. But yeah, just that there's a crucial aspect to being able to settle your own scores, and you didn't have that in DFC, and I think that was a mistake. Obviously, it was a crucial thing for them to not enable right off the bat because it is supposed to be kind of a team-based conflict. But it would have been nice to have some means to do that, even if it was just opt-in.
So we've also heard quite a lot of perspective on why exactly the game, and I mean DFC, was shut down. Is there
Mhm.
anything that you can sort of elaborate on that subject?
It was sudden. I wish I could, but I think we received notice like days before it happened. Um, it was kind of a weird time because not that long before that happened, we actually had access to Griffin, Brian, out of the blue. And I remember there was there's so much drama. Can I curse on this stream? Um, it was just ridiculous. Like when we knew Griffin was signing on, like everybody and their mother, all the associates would log on and quickly try to be like, oh, you should listen to me because I know what's going on and nobody else here knows what's going on. So you should do blah, blah, blah. Everybody had an agenda for what they wanted the programmer to actually do. And of course, he just did whatever he wanted. And most of it was relatively, some of it was crucial, like the whole um, realm point bug where people were poofing. That was kind of fun or critical for him to fix. But then other things were just like meh. I don't even remember what they were, to be honest with you. Nothing of huge import was ever fixed. Um, I forgot your question. Man, I'm just rambling tonight.
Oh, that's okay. I should send you a copy. The question was
Oh, yes.
the end of the game.
Right, yeah. Yeah, so yeah, there was no context. It was just, well, we've had a good run, you guys. It's time to turn the lights off. And yeah, it was a bad time.
Right. So I guess speaking about the poofing bug, were there any, what was the funniest bug that you found or knew existed?
The door and container doors and containers for duping ruined the staffing experience, um, because we couldn't ever have doors and containers. So like we had to name things doors that couldn't be doors, and so basically what that did was, Nania kind of spoke to this. We had a database of EPARMs that were called to do like the quest related objectives. And players found a way to dupe using doors and containers. And a lot of doors and containers had triggers that relied on EPARMs to do their business. And so that, as soon as we basically had to remove all the doors and containers, that basically broke dozens and dozens of quests. And then after that, we just had all this litter in the EPARMs, so we could never do anything with them. And yeah, so that bug was disastrous, even though it might not seem like it.
What were some of your kind of major contributions to DFC as a staff member?
Oh boy. I'd like to think that some of my best times were doing invasions. I really loved doing them, and for a time I did, well, some of my earlier work that I really enjoyed was doing some of the Kaid invasions. So like where I tried to do invasions where there was like a central villain over the course of several invasions, and then players got to kill it basically. Um, so I really enjoyed those. And then, of course, some of my greatest probably thing, yeah, the thing people associate me with the most is the great tone, I think. Hey, look at there. It's in the chat already. Um, that one was me, because nobody else wanted to do it. And Kaid went through, it totally is Kaid. Kaid. Um, went through a series of, before we broke it up, um, people wanted to get rid of Kaid for a long time. Taz more specifically, because there's a lot of abuse going on, and they were just tired of dealing with it. So one of the first steps to that was just kind of reducing the power creep in the game. And so this came like we need to do this, and it's like, well, nobody wanted to do it, so I'm like, I'll do it. um, yeah, so that was a contribution, whether it was for the good or not. I had to do it.
Right. It sounds like it was a lot of work. Was it really intensive?
It was a ton of work. Um, that was my first foray into doing, like, I basically had to log everything, and then thankfully I was already a hobbyist programmer, so like I wrote scripts to just parse everything out, so that I could like basically do queries, because there's no way to cross-reference anything in those databases, which is what made doing anything really obnoxious, especially with quests. So yeah, it was a ton of work. Basically, I had to go through and be like, okay, well, what items have anything higher than this spell level, etc., and then try to just do a mapping of, okay, this was 4, this now needs to be a level 2, or maybe it makes more sense to do some other spell, etc. So yeah, that one was on me, kind of. We did our best, but it was not ideal, because then you ended up with a lot of redundant gear, basically. So I've always felt players' pain, but it had to happen, you guys. Like, you don't even know. um, yeah, I also did the spell lists. Somebody already mentioned that as well. We ended up, because it was dumb that, here we are, level 75, and we only had spells to level 36 or something ridiculous. So we ended up expanding those, and then also doing some work to the infamous pre-tapped spells. I was a mechanics junkie in DFC, so I spent a lot of time fiddling with numbers and figuring out what settings were because the manuals that we had were